Ed Walker with Frost Electric, or Supply, whatever you want to call it. One question, it's come up in the roundtables is, and John, you pointed it out, is the workforce, the retirements are coming, millennials are coming into. What are the differences you guys are seeing at your companies? Are you training differently with the millennials? What are the job requirements coming in that you're seeing? Because I think we're seeing a bunch of millennials come in to the workforce.
At ABB, we do we have same problem or opportunity for getting in, the aging workforce. But what we do is when we know that there's somebody that's going to be transitioning out of the company because of retirement and such, we try to get as much information out of that person as possible and put somebody that's coming in underneath that person. And it could be 4 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 2 years. But at least trying to get that tribal knowledge out of that individual to help retain some of that information so we don't lose it after that person is gone. And but also in the same way, with the young individuals coming into the workforce, we're doing a lot of learning from them as well. And we're learning to adapt to what the next generation workforce expects from an employer. So keeping up with technologies and learning the styles of how they operate, but with that workforce that's exiting, retiring, is getting that tribal knowledge out of them as much as we possibly can by putting sort of a mentorship program together for that.
I wanted you guys to kind of expand on that mentorship. Matt over here with Rab Lighting. Do you, in your current roles, are you mentoring anyone? And maybe talk about how you were partnered up with a mentor earlier in your career.
So I do. I mentor two folks. One is within my organization, and that can be difficult. Some people don't recommend that, but we have that type of relationship that can be honest and transparent. And I put her in that role, so I know what I was doing and what I was getting. So I'm comfortable doing that. And then there's another up-and-coming leader in a completely different discipline that I mentor as well. They were very organic, and I'm a very big fan of that mentor and that mentee. There's a chemistry that has to happen. There has to be a trust and a relationship for that to be successful. It can't be forced. It just becomes a meeting. And so I think that mentees and mentors can pick each other. I encourage folks to do that. If you see someone in your organization that is just coming in, start having those conversations. Sign yourself up to be their mentor if that is that type of relationship. I have lots of mentors. I don't subscribe to the one size fits all. I've got one mentor or two. It depends on the situation. I have particular people that I trust their judgment. They have a certain skill or expertise that if I'm in a particular situation, I can call and say, hey, let me run this by you. Here's my situation. So I encourage everyone to have multiple mentors. Everybody has different skill sets. So, get as many folks surrounding you on your team as you can.
Yeah, I'd say in mentorship, the mentorship ultimately falls on the mentee, right? And so there's, we have formal programs. I'm a mentor, both formally and informally, Matt. And the informal mentorships tend to be more organic. They tend to work better. But I would say if you're out here, who here has a mentor, right? As you build mentors, they eventually become your own board of directors, right? Where you're like, hey, I want to try this, and it sounds crazy, so you throw it out to a group you've trusted for a while, and there's all sorts of people on the board, right? I'd also use mentorship if any of you, if you talk about wanting to grow in a career, pick somebody who may be in charge of making that decision, in 2 or 3 steps, and pick them as a mentor and ask them, how do you, advice about your career, and ultimately, but ultimately you've got to be in charge of that. I think most of the programs where mentorship is formal, I'd say 90% of the time it isn't long-standing, but it is very immediate, positive, short-term effects about understanding the company, understanding the job, and feeling connected to the culture of the company. But when it's organic and when it's sought out, and when you put in the time and it's work, right? But if you put in the work to reach out to your mentors and ask for that formal time, the benefits are long-standing, career-lasting, and will do all you very well.
Great, thank you. In the spirit of learning from each other, I've asked you guys to maybe have a question ready for the audience that you want to know about the next generation of leaders. So, anybody want to start?
I guess I would have a question. Would be, what do you expect from your employer as you go through your career, and how would that employer need to adapt to what you need?
Now we need some brave people to answer that. What do you expect from your employer? Okay.
I think one thing that's good is feedback. So just positive, negative, constructive. Hey, how am I doing? Or hey, if there are things that I can improve upon, what can I improve upon? What can I be doing better?
Hey, David, can I ask you a follow-up question?
Yeah.
You taking follow-up questions?
Sure.
How do you like your feedback? I mean, I think feedback's changed. I find it GE, which pretty much modeled, the current corporate feedback loop of standardized, happens every March, just abandoned it. I think about a year ago. For very fast-moving, kind of more informal session feedback. Talk to me when you ask for feedback. What are you looking for? How often are you looking for it? And what do you mean by feedback?
Yeah, so I think the one consistency would be face-to-face, or at least over the phone, not via email or anything like that, is definitely best. But I think both formally and informally. So, for most companies, if you're at least meeting formally with your staff members at least twice a year, that's probably good to make sure that you're not missing anything. But also just regular touch points sporadically, maybe as things come up, or you kind of have the open door policy so that people can approach you. So probably a combination of the two, I'd say.
Anybody else out there?
Anyone else want to share?
I think one big thing, especially in our company, what I see every day is, employers that care about their employees not only as, workers, but as people. We have a lot of mentorship, at a high level, mid-level, low level going on, where people take a lot of interest in not only their professional lives, but personal lives. I think it goes a long way knowing that people or your employer cares about you as a person and not just a number.
Thank you, Mark.
Hey, excuse me, Dan Knapp with Standard Electric Supply. I think one of the things I look for is in a company is being fair, not necessarily being equal. I came from a consultant engineering firm where advancement was by seniority, and it quickly demotivated me. So I think being fair to your employees doesn't necessarily mean being equal. So treating your high performers like high performers, and so that's what I'm looking for.
Great.
Eric Hoff, Crescent Electric. I think one of the things that we look for is a commitment to development. for that employee. So if you've identified, you know, a high potential candidate on your team or somebody that, you know, want to join the team, you've got to be able to dedicate some time, sending them to conferences like this, you know, getting them involved with different training programs, whether it's in-house, out-of-house, third party, or bringing in a trainer. I think that commitment to their growth and exposure with that kind of training is very important. And it shows that, hey, maybe I don't have a dollar figure to show how important I am to the company, but they want to see me in that next position, so they're getting me that type of training. So.
Hi, Cheri Elsie with Border States. I agree with everything, all the comments that were said here already, but also we talked a lot about getting outside of your comfort zone. We heard it yesterday, we heard it today, and kind of picking off of what Eric mentioned just there, but providing the opportunities to those individuals to go outside of their comfort zone. They may not know what that looks like, but as leaders, kind of guiding them to stretch assignments, if you will, and saying, hey, this is an opportunity for you to get outside of your comfort zone, and then allow them to do it.
Let's see if there's one more question from the panel that you guys would like to hear from the audience, or two.
Sure. Quick question is we talk a lot about, and we talk a lot in our meeting rooms, and I was talking to a young gentleman today about threats coming into the industry. And sometimes we get so myopic because we've got so much useful history in the industry, we don't see threats coming. What do you guys think is there any threats out there that you guys see, or as we look at a SWOT analysis, opportunities out there that we're not talking about, or you don't think we're talking about enough, either in the industry or in your own businesses?
We've got one here.
Brandon Schneider with Madison Electric. One of the threats I see is automation. The world's getting smaller and smaller by the day. There's a lot more places to get material. That's my biggest concern going forward, is the effect of automation and the internet age on the industry.
Do we have anyone from the panel who wants to comment on that and a rebuttal maybe, or something? Any comments to that? Good. Okay. Anyone else? Threats?
This may be a little, well, Brian Rooney, Crescent Electric. This may be a bit more of a radical view, but I think you're going to see in the next 10 to 15 years, probably at least half of the stock and flow business as far as traditional distributors will disappear. There's nothing that you can do to stop it. I know this is pessimistic, but that's how it's going to go. And so what you have to do as an organization is look at, how are you going to fill that gap? And I think you're going to see distributors are going to have to pivot to everything being a technical sale. That's where you're going to win. Because you're going to have, big box stores that aren't going to have the same type of expertise, the same type of people, the same type of human equity that our organizations are going to have. I think you're going to have to make sure that all your sales are technical, that you're going to have, project-based offerings, things like that. Because a lot of the, connector-type business, standard breakers, stuff like that, nobody in this room has the purchasing power of a Home Depot. Nobody in this room has the purchasing power of an Amazon.
I assume.
Great.
I assume, Brian, you think it's going to go online and to big box stores, or primarily online?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the timeline is, but it's going to happen. Only because the people in our generation, everything they buy and everything they consume as it is over the internet. I think if you have a distributor maybe that has a strong e-commerce presence or is willing to invest heavily in that, you can probably do all right. You can stave that off for a while. That said, companies like Amazon have really done a great job in a first mover advantage situation. They're the first ones that have kind of cornered the marketplace, and they're kind of the ones that are, on everybody's mind. If you think of these days, there was a lot of search engines a long time ago, but everybody says, let me Google it. They don't just say search it. because Google was the first one to figure it out and do it very well. That's why a lot of the other engines failed, basically.
I'd also say we still say Xerox, and there's a lot more copiers. So, I mean, I think there'll be other changes to come in, but I agree with you.
That's great. Anyone else want to share a threat up here?
I don't know if it's much of a threat, but the technology of products is moving so quickly. By the time you get the new widget in and stock it, that widget's old. And how do you keep up with that flow of material? Because when something's being sold on a job by the manufacturer or they're selling a new product, not the one you just got in. So that's the hard part, to keep up with the flow of the products and the technology. I mean, especially in the LED market, they switch monthly. So that it's keeping up with those is frustrating from a sales and operations role.
That's a great point. Let's pivot that into a question, actually. How can we use that change in technology, or what are your companies doing to innovate, and what's the next thing that you're doing or seeing? Vito?
That is a challenge. I think that's a training issue for our sales reps. How do you keep everybody up to speed? So kind of going back to the comment about a technical sale, I think that, we're looking at our sales forces, they're selling solutions. They're not selling widgets anymore. They're not selling light bulbs. They've got to focus on what is an entire solution. You can't buy an entire lighting and control system from Amazon. They can't design it for you. They can't spec it. They can't do those things. So to do that, if you're going to have sales folks that are selling on solutions, you have to have those technical resources in-house as well that keep up with that technology. We're not expecting all of our sales reps to know every bit of it, but they know who to call. They have a team of folks behind them that can come in and do that technical piece. So it's a little bit of a shift of philosophy than just walking in and walking out with an order, which has been our history. But it's really that just shift in sales philosophy.
It's important too to have the relationship with the manufacturer so that you can see that coming. Most of us have dealt with dead stock, stagnant inventory, things that are around much too longer than they should be, and working with them, with marketing, to try and get those items out of stock as painlessly as possible so that the new stock can come in to be sold as well.
Great. Any other comments on that? Louis.
Back up a second, something we talked about yesterday. Young man's mentioning about the big box people and Amazon, et cetera. And so I was reflecting that 40 years ago when I got in the business, Home Depot, Lowe's, Menards were almost unheard of. Very small companies. If somebody had told you then that over the next 40 years, they would grow to what they've become and sell the equipment, electrical equipment that they sell, what would you have predicted for our industry? What would you have thought would happen to our industry?
Oh, it's going to go away. It's going to disappear, right?
What's happened?
We're still here.
Grown a lot. Yeah. Okay? So sometimes what seems obvious isn't so obvious. On the other hand, 40 years ago, the top two retailers in the country were Sears and Kmart. They're about to go down a tube together, right? So that work on crystal ball would be a really good thing to have, but what looks like so obvious down the road isn't always the case. And I think that if you're adaptable and you get back to bringing value to what the customer needs, there's going to be a place for you. And if not, there won't be.